Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar is in collaboration with Microsoft and Reddington. We're going to be discussing when clouds meet security with Microsoft 365 E5. Before I hand it off to Arshana, I would like to brief you on our speakers for today. So our speakers are Emilio Shaheen, our Cloud Systems Engineer, and Ziad Yashoui, our Security Business Development Specialist. Arshana is going to take over now and tell you more about the company.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time and joining us this afternoon. This is a part 2 of the E5 session from our last month's session. So I hope all of you have attended part 1 of the session. If not, I'm sure we'll be happy to share the recording with you so you can just go through it. It's nice to see some familiar faces on the list, and welcome to everyone who's attending our webinars for the first time. As for most of you already know me, my name is Archana, and I am the Business Development Manager handling UAE. Giving you a small brief on who Exquitech is, just for the people who are attending our sessions for the first time. We are Microsoft Gold partners. We have been in the market for the last 10 years. Our primary focus is Microsoft Cloud Services only. We've been awarded as Meta Partner of the Year and Cloud Partner of the Year for the last 5 consecutive years. Our focus markets are across Middle East, Turkey, and Africa. Like I mentioned, our primary focus is only on Microsoft Cloud products, and this is the only thing that we work around or do or focus as an organization as well. Our primary focus is on 2 major products handled from Microsoft, which is one is the modern workplace products, which is nothing but the whole Office 365 and Microsoft 365 product suites, and the other secondary product being Azure. From the modern workplace, we provide a lot of value-added services on top of Office 365, like building on top of SharePoint, automating business processes using Power Automate, and providing data analytics and reporting tools using Power BI. On the side of Azure, we have a team dedicated to help on-prem environment customers to make the decision and provide consulting on how to move to the cloud very seamlessly and provide advisory and consulting services for deployments, structures, or even provide training on all of these products. Our main reason of this webinar today and all of us here today is to just make sure that we're all aware of the whole M365 product suite on a whole. Like most of you have already attended part 1 of the session, you already know that M365 E5 is focused more on the security aspect, and it kind of provides an enterprise class of security for all your devices and applications. So it kind of gives you an ease to ensure that any security breaches can probably be caught right ahead of time, and and it's completely focused on the SMB business. Today, we're going to be focusing on how Microsoft 365 Enterprise E5 is going to fit your environment, and the whole product itself consists a best-in-class productivity app. It includes advanced security, compliance, voice, and analytical capabilities. Now, just going through the agenda today, we are going to be focusing on 4 main topics, which is the Azure Active Directory, Microsoft Defender for Office 365, Microsoft Data Loss Prevention for Endpoint, and Advanced Compliance. It's going to be an interactive session. So if you have any questions on any of the topics when the demo is being done or explained, feel free to put your questions out into the chat window. So we will pick it up in a timely manner and get the presenter to explain or answer it for you. So just handing it over to Ziad now so he can go ahead with the session. Ziad, take it over from here.
All right, thank you, Arshana, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining today's webinar. My name is Ziad. I'm a Security Business Development Specialist here at Exquitech. So as Arshana mentioned, today's webinar is a continuation of a session we had a couple of weeks back on the E5, where previously we covered part of the security solutions in E5, like Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Azure Information Protection, and Microsoft Cloud App Security. So in case you weren't able to attend our first session, please feel free to reach out and we will be more than happy to schedule a one-to-one meeting with you so that you don't miss out on any of those features. In this session, we will be focusing on the data protection and compliance aspect that is offered via Microsoft's 365 E5 license. So as you know, the modern space is all about empowering users to work from everywhere and at any time, which means that our data could be residing everywhere. So how can we protect it and prevent it from falling into the wrong hands and face some compliance issues? Hida, just if you can please change slide. Perfect. So it's important to find a balance between powerful and complicated security capabilities and a security posture that you can maintain over time with your current staff and as well as your current or your budget. And that's basically what Microsoft 365 security through the E5 is all about. They are offering a suite or a collection of security features while helping you benefit from a high discount as a bundle. So Microsoft provides this holistic security that is aligned to these four pillars of security. That is identity and access management, information protection, we have threat protection and security management. And this is, of course, happening regardless of where your users or data are. If we can please move to the next slide, Rida. Perfect. So Microsoft Suite offers an end-to-end security. It's granting the customers an advantage in creating a comprehensive adaptive security program like no other. And Rida, if you can please move to the next slide. Thank you. And identity and access management revolve around protecting the user's identity. And this is done by allowing us to do things such as single sign-on configuration, application collection management, or even granting users conditional access policies based on different set of criteria, including users' risk score. And we will have a deeper dive into those capabilities in our demo at the end of the slides. So we're moving on to information protection. And this is all about having the capability to create labels which will impose a policy to certain documents or emails. And this is done in order to protect it by encrypting it and on top of the encryption giving specific people, whether they are from our organization or external users, so could be clients, partners, any of those, by assigning permissions to every single user on a different level. So if we move to the next slide, we will see that whenever we're talking about a threat in the cybersecurity world, if we can move please next. Okay, Rida, I think there's a lag in my internet. Just if you can go back one slide, and then we'll move to the E5 slide. Okay, so a constantly evolving threat landscape, it requires that companies not only protect against threats, but detect and recover rapidly from security incidents. Here, Microsoft's threat protection solution, it's offering a combination of traditional approaches such as anti-malware and new innovations such as user and entity behavior analytics. And on top of it, endpoint detection and response. So we are investigating in both the prevention of an attack and post-breach detection and response. And this is all done through the E5 capabilities. So moving to the E5 slide, here we can see E5's unique features in a simplified view. So in our demo, we will be focusing on Azure Active Directory, specifically the Plan 2 features that you would only benefit from the E5, where we will cover things such as privileged identity management and conditional access policies. On top of that, we will be covering some of the Microsoft Defender for Office Plan 2 features, which is a set of advanced threat protection, and we will have a look on how to hunt for threats, how to do e-discovery to find specific keywords across a user's, let's say, applications, and how we can use Microsoft's attack simulator to educate our users against cyber threats, hence strengthening our company's security posture. Also, we will go over some of the DLP capabilities and features and Windows information protection capabilities, and finish with having a look at the compliance dashboard. So I will start by sharing my screen so that we can cover one of the Active Directory Plan 2 features, so Azure Active Directory Plan 2 features, which we will be benefiting from in the E5 plan. So what we will cover here as a first is basically the privileged identity management from E5. So first, what is privileged identity management? Privileged identity management is all about giving specific users higher privilege so that they can perform, let's say, their tasks. And there are two kinds of ways that we can assign those privilege, as we will discover together. So in the dashboard here, what you see as an administrator or as a user, I will have 4 capabilities, and the minimum that will be turned on for a user is the capability to activate a role that has been assigned for them. But before a user can activate a role, we would want to assign this role. So if I go to the assignment role, what I will see over here is that I already have a preset of roles that have been predefined by Microsoft. And I can always custom make my own custom role in case I don't find it. But for purposes of demo, I will show you how we can, for example, give a person in my organization a role where he can perform this attack simulation as an administrator. So clicking on it, I can go to the settings first to see what type of settings has been assigned to this user. So one of the features in the PIM from Azure Active Directory is that I have the option to either give the user an active assignment or an eligible assignment. So the difference between active and eligible assignment is that active assignment is always there. So once I grant this user a permission or a privilege, it will always be part of his privilege. Whereas if I'm giving him an eligible assignment, this means that the user might have to request or to justify the requirement to have this privilege before being granted this privilege. And this can be determined over here on every role I'm assigning. So for example, in this role, the user is required to justify before being granted an activation. And as you can see, I'm giving a certain time window for this user from the moment he requests an activation, how many hours he will be able to benefit from these privileges. And also, I can assign specific approvers to approve access to this attack simulation administrator. And of course, I can edit the times, I can decrease them, and fine-tune it based on whatever fits my needs. Also, as an extra layer of protection, I can enforce the user whenever they are requesting, let's say, access to an eligible assignment role. I can enforce them to use multi-factor authentication just to make sure that the person requesting this privilege is the person it's claiming to be, as an extra layer of protection. Now we're going back to the assignment. As we discussed, we can either assign it as an eligible or as an active. And in this example, you can see it's already assigned to 2 users. So one person named Adele in my company. Now, if I go to Adele's Azure portal, you can see that Adele, she wasn't granted, let's say, global administrator role, so she will not be able to assign a privilege to anyone. But since she is someone from the team, we did grant her the privilege to audit all of the logs happening. And if she were to activate a role, she would have to manually go and activate her role. So clicking on activate the role, she will see the role that was assigned to her. And in this case, she is only an attack simulation administrator. To activate it, she simply has to click on activate. Okay, and what will happen is she will have to click the ticket system based on the ticket number that she's working on, and she has to request or justify why she's accessing or requesting the access to the privilege of attack simulation. So let's say, hi, I need it for a simulation attack. And just like that, within a couple of clicks, Adele was able to request from whoever is her manager or whoever has the privilege to give her the access, some access. So in this case, I am the person who can grant Adele access to those privileges. So I would go back to my console, and here I can see an approval for request dashboard. So if I go to here, what will happen is in a few seconds, I will see that Adele has requested access. So I can review this and I can see the reason she mentioned and the ticket number validated. And if this makes sense, I will just go ahead and approve it and just say permission, let's say granted. And from here forward, Adele will have 8 hours of privilege to work as an attack simulation administrator. So this is one example. We can do as much roles or assign as many roles as we need. We can use predefined roles or use roles that are custom made by our company. And you might be wondering, so why is PIM important? There are various reasons where PIM is important. So first of all, by activating PIM, which is based on eligible assignment, I am mitigating the risk that is accompanied by having a user with privileged whenever they get compromised. So let's say someone has access to a certain environment and this person gets compromised, okay? If this person has to approve a request every time, then whenever the account gets compromised and they are initiating a request for a task that doesn't make sense, then I might give them a call to make sure that this is the person who's trying to access. And if not, I will not grant them the privilege, meaning that the attacker who successfully compromised the account, even though he was able to log in as the person, he was not able to be granted the privileges that he would want to have. Another scenario or case would be where we have a third party, let's say a company that is working on my environment and I would like to stay in control. And of course, whenever I'm using PIM, I have the capability to audit all of the logs or all of the requests that are happening in my organization. So that way I have the visibility to see who is getting access to what, and I can do some investigation whether I want to make sure that an account was compromised or whether a third-party company I'm working with is doing the job that we agreed on. So this is basically what PIM is in a brief. Now, if we need to move on to another feature, which is part of Azure Active Directory Plan 2, and this is something which is well known in the market, which is single sign-on. So in organizations today, we have users handling or using at least, let's say, a couple of applications. And what we would want to do is we would want to facilitate the way that these users are accessing these applications. And this is what single sign-on can help us do. So if I go to the enterprise applications, here I can see all of the applications that my organization is already using, and I have the capability to activate a new application if I need it. So for example, if I go to DocuSign, if I need to, let's say, configure DocuSign for single sign-on so that users don't have to remember another password, I just simply click on it, and it will redirect me to a page where I can choose the method of authentication for signing in. Okay, so this has already been preset, but if you want to go to the single sign-on, I would just click on Get Started. And usually I would get these 4 options. So in my case, since I'm enabling a single sign-on, I will click here. And what I would like to point out over here is that the process of activating single sign-on these days has become very straightforward and easy. So in the past, it was a pain point of configuring, let's say, single sign-on, since we would need to manually configure the application and copy some URLs and certificates between the admin portals. But now, as you can see here, within just a couple of clicks, or let's say a single click even of button, an admin can automatically configure single sign-on on, for example, here DocuSign admin portal. And this is all being done because of Microsoft My App Secure Sign-In browser extension. So we covered how we can, let's say, activate a single sign-on for an application. And as you were able to see, it's just within a couple of clicks. We don't need to do much. But there remains another issue that we might need to tackle. So as you're well aware of, modern organizations, they are or they have already experienced an explosion of apps. So this left the users with some uncertainty, or it's unclear to them which applications they have to access and how to access them. So to tackle this, one way Microsoft can help is that we have this collection tab where I can create a custom collection for different departments or different users. And what I mean by that is that, for example, if I'm giving the sales department, let's say, a set of applications that they need to use for their business workflow, I can just create a sample and add the applications that this team would need, for example, to do their workflow. Okay, so let's see, for example, I know that the sales team would need to access all of these applications. I would simply add it. And then I would just assign the users simply by adding them over here. So if I have a sales group, I would just directly go and look for the sales group. Or if I don't have a sales group, I can manually pick the people that I need to grant them or push these applications for them. And just like that, what I did is I created a collection that people coming from the sales department on their portal, they will see those applications I assigned. And that way they will not have to, search through 50 or 100 applications that my company has, even though they only need to work on 5 or let's say a specific set of applications. Now, something else also which is equally important is protecting my applications. So if I go to the home button, and here I would want to look for the service of security. So let me just search for it over here. So in the security, what I can do on the level of application, I can do something which is called conditional access. So conditional access, as the name indicates, it is that I can put a set of conditions which the user trying to access an application has to meet before granting them access to an application. Okay, so it's a rule-based approach which will secure not just an application, but also a data, because the data in most cases is hosted on an application. So let's see how we can do that. So simply I can create a policy, and in this policy I can name it, for example, if I'm doing here, I would want, let's say, users to use MFA, multi-factor authentication, in case they are high-risk users. So first I name the policy that I'm applying. Then I would create the condition that the users have to meet. So in this case, since I'm looking for high-risk users, I will set the high-risk user to high, meaning that if a user that is signing in has a high-risk score, I will request from them a specific, let's say, authentication method before granting them access. So since here I'm creating a multi-factor authentication based on the risk score, I will require multi-factor authentication. And of course, I can specify certain users in my organization, or I might want to include everyone. And as you've seen here, so Microsoft gave me a warning not to lock myself out. So it's always good to exclude specific users. And in this case, I will exclude myself just to stay on the safe side. And of course, I can apply this policy to all cloud apps or selectively choose some cloud apps. And this is not the only factor we can look at. So here in this case, we are looking at the risk score of a user, but usually we can look at many aspects. So for example, I can look at the sign-in risk, the device platform. So this can add like a limitation to limit a person accessing an application from an out-of-date operating system. Because as you know, if my system is out of date, and it needs a patch, this means it's a vulnerable operating system, which there's a risk that this computer is compromised. I can even limit access from specific locations. Why is this important? Because usually if an attacker has compromised an account, the odds of them logging in from the same, let's say, location as your users work in is low. So limiting locations can also strengthen the security or authentication process. And just by that, I created a policy which will ensure that whenever I have a high-risk user, okay, they will be requested to authenticate using MFA, just to make sure that the user who is trying to access this application is a legitimate, let's say, user. Now, something else that we will cover, and this is something that is really interesting, because here we are educating your users. So as you know, the threat relies between the interaction between the users and the data. This is the weak link, let's say, in our company, right? And we've been hearing it a lot in the cybersecurity world everywhere. They tell us that always it's very important to also educate our users, to train them to be able to detect something that is malicious. So how can we do that? The easiest way to target a user in your company is by sending them an email. And I'm sure we as administrators, we keep on receiving those phishing attempts. So here what I can do, I can play the role of a bad actor, and I can run a simulation or a campaign where I will be launching an attack on my users. Now, of course, if a user fails in the simulation, no malicious work will happen to me, since it's just a testing platform. But what I will be able to know is that who is my, let's say, weak users. And by identifying my weak users, then I can impose maybe higher restrictions or more aggressive policies on these users to better protect my environment. So in the simulation, as you can see, what's really nice is that Microsoft already has some predefined templates for us, which we can choose from. And we have variable techniques that attackers use to target our users. So we can either perform a simulation attack simulating credential harvest, something that contains a link to malware, or even an attachment, and so forth. So here I will just say sample simulation. And as you can see, I can choose different payloads at different types. So why is this important? Because when I'm training my users, of course, I will be running different attacks on a different interval of time just to keep the awareness going on. So it's good to have the capability to choose a specific payload every time. And here I would want to include all of the users in my organizations. Or I can limit it to specific users. So if I'm targeting finance people, I might realize that finance people are targeted through, let's say, URL links more than attachments, then I would do a specific simulation for them. And there's a due date for this launch attack and when it will happen. And from there, you're done, okay? Something also interesting, or what would happen in case someone fails with such an attempt, is that they will be redirected to an educational page, and this educational page will let the user know that they failed, let's say, a simulation attack, and then it will redirect them to a training overview portal where they can see or where they can learn how to be able to detect or what, let's say, a specific key to look for in an email to be able to determine whether this is a phishing attempt or this is something legitimate coming from a real client or partner. And of course, once we run a simulation, we would want to have an overview to check what users in my organization fell victim for this type of simulation and whether they were actually compromised or no, they just opened the email and then they moved it to junk or so on. Okay, also, as you can see here, I can see which users are taking the training. And why this would help me is that if I have users that are being compromised, but they're not taking the training, then maybe I can have a 30-minute one-on-one session with them and bring to their attention the importance of being able to detect such attempts to protect the organization's data and environment. Now, this is, by the way, this is part of Microsoft Defender for Office Plan 2. So you wouldn't get it in the Plan 1. This is also limited to E5. Or, of course, you can take it as an add-on separately in case you are interested in just this specific feature. Now, something that is very important in terms of protecting data and compliance is data loss prevention. So just to make sure there's no confusion in the naming, because sometimes people, when they hear data loss prevention, what comes to mind is that, so if I'm hit by a ransomware, would I be able to retrieve my data? No. When we say data loss prevention, a better term would be data leakage prevention, because the solution here is working based on policies that we defined to be able to determine how a user can interact with a specific file. Meaning, in specific cases, I can block a user from being able to access the file, or maybe I would give them the capability to access the file, but block them from being able to send the file. But before we take a look on the data loss prevention, or before we even dig into the data loss prevention, we need to have a look or to understand, first of all, what capabilities are offered to do data classification. So first, why do we need to do data classification? For a simple reason, every organization have both types of data. So what is publicly available and what is private or confidential for my corporate. So the first step as an administrator, I would need to differentiate between these two data, because it doesn't make sense to apply policies on public available data, which users can go and get maybe from my website or from any other source. Now, once I classify my data, or once I am able to understand what data is important and I need to protect, the next step would be to be able to, let's say, point at this data and allow the system to identify the data. So this can be done using 3 capabilities by Microsoft. I will start with the trivial ones and then end it with the most interesting one, which is Trainable Classifier. So first of all, I can benefit from the predefined sensitive information types that Microsoft has already done for us. And usually sensitive information types, this falls around, let's say, GDPR-related data, such as financial data, could be personally identifiable information, or healthcare. And we can use this to detect documents and files containing specific keywords. And based on this detection, we will take action based on the policy we've set in place. So here, as you will see in a few, you will see around 200 predefined sensitive information types, okay, revolving around things like financing, things like personally identifiable information, and so on. And in case you don't find a sensitive information type that might be limited to your company, you have the option to create your own sensitive information type. So how can we create this? We will create one together. So I'll give you the scenario which we will be creating. Let's say I am working with customers and I need to protect any document that is containing a customer ID. Okay. Since the customer ID, usually every company has its own format to write it down. In this case, odds are I will not find it in the predefined template. Rather, I will need to create one for myself. So I will just go to create sensitive information type. Okay, this is just taking a bit of time. Just please bear with me. Okay, so we're back. So as you were saying, in the sensitive information type, I have the option to create my own sensitive information if needed. And this can be done just by clicking on the creative sensitive information type. And from here, I will be redirected to a page where I can create, let's say, unique customer ID. Okay, identify customer IDs based on my format that I'm using at my company. And here I would choose the create pattern. So first of all, I can choose the confidence level, meaning if I want it to be very aggressive or accurate or not very accurate. So in my case, I would rather have something that has an exact match to the regex I'm doing, because it will be the case. And the primary element, I can add either a regular expression, regex, or a keyword list, keyword dictionary function. So keyword list could be names, like the name of my company, things indicating stuff limited to my company. In this case, I will add a regular expression. Now, the advantage of having a regular expression is that this will cover any format falling under the customer ID format. So here I will write down the we write down the customer ID. So our format to creating a customer ID, we usually have 4 letters, CUCT, which stands for customer, and this is followed by 5 digits. So here in this case, I created a regex which will detect any customer ID, which could be, let's say, CUCT 1125. It's that simple. And just by doing so, I created a pattern unique where I can now use in my policy setup. Okay, but I'm sure some of you, when you saw me writing the regex, it's something new to you, and you might have thought, but what if I do not know how to create a regex? And this is what Trainable Classifier can help me with. But before jumping to Trainable Classifier, just briefly to have a small talk about exact data match. So exact data match, it is good for the scenarios where if you wanted to create custom and sensitive information type that use exact data values. And this is good when we are trying to deal, let's say, with the database. So here I can use an exact data match. We would have to be matching point by point to apply a policy. So we're moving to the third capability of classification, which is Trainable Classifier. And this is the most interesting one because it makes the work very easy. So in this scenario, what the Trainable Classifier allows us to do is that if I have a set of sample documents, let's say invoices, okay, or contracts that my company issues, and I need to create a policy that will take action whenever one of those contracts are being sent or accessed by a user. So how can I let Microsoft or let my solution identify this type of document? Simply what I can do is I can create my own trainable classifier. Okay, so here I will, for example, create a classifier for contracts. And what I will do is that I can access all of my data from my database or my site, in this case from SharePoint. And in SharePoint, I have already allocated what we call a seed data. So now I'm seeding the system with a set of samples. So it's anywhere between 50 to 1,000 samples. I will just add it here and create a trainable classifier. So now what Microsoft will be doing is that it will be opening these documents. It will be leveraging on machine learning and AI to do the analysis to be able to understand what is unique about these documents and be able to like fingerprint it. So I've done this before just to be able to show you the next steps. So now that Microsoft has created a classifier, the next step would be to test this classifier. So now, since I'm testing this classifier, what I will do is I will add a mix of documents, with some which are coming out of a contract template and some which are coming from something else. So here, for example, I will add the contracts test data, which is a mix of document. And I will allow the system to, on its own, identify which document that I have submitted is a match. So why is this important? Because I will be using this classifier to push policies on files, but before doing so, I need to make sure that the classifier is working in a correct manner so that it doesn't cause any issues. Okay, so now that it has been added, okay, we will be able to review it in a bit. So usually it's gonna take some time, and I will get back to it, but also we've pre-submitted one so that we can show you the next step. So here what I will do is I will go to one of those trainable classifiers that I was able to do testing on, and then Microsoft will just ask me to validate the tested items to say if what they detected as a match, if really it is a match, and if not, to tell it that it's not a match. And from there, I can go ahead and publish this classifier. So now that we're done with doing data classification, the next step would be to create a policy to protect my data. So for this purpose, I will go to the data loss prevention solution. And as you've noticed, everything related to compliance is being accessed through one dashboard. So I don't have to jump from one solution to another. It's all integrated here in one unified management console. I will open the solution and we will have a look on how we can create a policy and what devices or what channels can be protected using Microsoft. So I will just choose any template. Now what you can see over here is that these are the locations that Microsoft is able to protect. So I'm able to protect the email channel, any email being sent regardless from where it's being sent, whether from a personal PC, from my mobile device, from my corporate device. If I have a match of a data type based on a classification, the policy will be implemented. I can even protect locations such as SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, and Chat. And on top of that, I can even do the LP on the level of the endpoint if it's a Windows device. Now, if I'm using a third-party application or a Microsoft application, we have the CASB, which we covered last time in our first webinar. And here I will be imposing the LP even at the level of third-party applications. And of course, because I am on the Microsoft E5 plan, I will have Azure Information Protection Plan 1, which, if you recall, what I will get is an AIP on-prem scanner. And this on-prem scanner, it's like a crawler, which will go through all of my on-prem repositories and scan for documents. So here we will see what we can do to create these rules. Okay, and of course, I can always include specific people and exclude people, since whenever I'm rolling out a policy, I don't want to impose the same policy to all of the people. So we're here in creating the rule, I need first to select a condition of a match case. And in this condition here, I can choose, for example, a trainable classifier that I did, or any sensitive information type that I have defined before. So here I will define ABA routing number, and then I will need to create the action which will impose the DLP. So as you can see, the action can be segregated to 4 levels. So I can restrict first access to content in Microsoft locations if I need to block the user. And here I can directly block the user from accessing these SharePoints, or I can even block everyone from granting access. So if this is a very confidential data and I have the feel that my network is compromised, I might want to be on the safe side, or just block the specific user. Now, if the person is trying to do data leakage on the level of a Windows device, I have the capability to choose different or various methods the person is able to leak data and apply different policies to it. So how can a user leak data through a device? They can upload it through a browser. So here I'm blocking the LP on the level of web. I can block, I can audit, I can do whatever I want. If a person wants to steal your data, they can copy it to a clipboard and, let's say, paste it on Teams chat, on SharePoint, on WhatsApp, whatsoever. So I have the capability also to block it on the level of copying. They can copy it to a USB. So also I can block them from being able to copy to USB, or they can share it via a network share or an unauthorized application. They can print it and so forth. So what we are able to do is any mean or any channel a user can use on the level of a device, we have the capability to take action on blocking or allowing the action to be taken by this user. And also we can restrict third-party applications. being accessed by a person. So for example, I can restrict them from using G Suite if I want to do so. And the last thing, which is really interesting, is the on-prem files. So if you recall, a couple of minutes back, we said that in AIP Plan 2, we have the scroller. And why is this interesting? Because after creating a policy to protect specific files, it is normal to have this file located at multiple endpoints or multiple repositories from different users. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I created a policy to protect all financial related data. And being financial related data, I only want people from finance to have access to this data. But since I didn't have a DLP in place before, this means that there's a very high chance that this financial related data could be residing in places it shouldn't be, such as a salesperson's computer device or maybe a certain database. So what I will do here is I will restrict access, and I can even remove these files that are residing in places they shouldn't be residing. So it's like I can move it to a quarantine folder, and I can choose this quarantine folder. And of course, whenever an incident happens, I have the capability to be notified and even to notify specific people, let's say some managers, that this user is trying to do data leakage. So this sums the DLP capabilities. What we saw is that it's a fully mature DLP. It's not covering only, let's say, Office applications, but it's covering cloud applications, so third-party applications. It can cover devices that are Windows, and it can cover our database and repositories and things as such. So from here, we will move on with my colleague to cover the remaining parts of this demo. So Emilio, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Before, Emilio, before you start, if anyone has any questions on the topics that Ziad covered, if you want to just put them in the chat window or just unmute yourself and ask your question.
Arshana, I guess we have one question.
Yes. Suppose we are adding DocuSign or any third-party applications for single sign-on. What about security risks? Any security risk at the tenant level? Do you want to take it, Ziad?
Yes, so basically, if we're using, let's say in the case of any third application, so the risk is happening at the level of application. It's not happening at the level of tenants, since we're using the portal to manage the way this user is accessing this enterprise application. And to mitigate the risk, Mr. Aziz, what we can do is we can enforce, let's say, a third layer of authentication using MFA, or by maybe logging from specific device to make sure that the person who's accessing this device is the person who's claiming itself to be. So by doing so, we're mitigating the risk of having a compromised account and giving this malicious actor the capability to log into the account and do whatever they intended to do.
So I think, Emilio, I think you can take over because I don't see any other questions.
Okay, thank you, Arshana. Thank you, Ziad. Hello, everyone. I'm Emilio, Cloud System Engineer at Exquitech. I hope you are all benefiting from the session so far. So let me just brief you what I will be covering. I will be covering the threat and tracker and explorer solution, the automated investigation and response, the Windows information protection, and the e-discovery compliance. Before I start my demo, let me just brief you about the capabilities that we will see over here. So mainly the first feature, which is the threat tracker and the automated investigation response, is part of the Microsoft Defender solution. Ziad, you wanna say something?
No, I just wanted to add that you did not share your screen.
Yeah, sure. Before I'm just explaining before I share my screen.
All right.
Let's just share it. So before I start like explaining about the demo, just let me explain about the capabilities of the investigation and response. So what are the capabilities? First, it can save like your security operation team time and effort, which is very important nowadays. As you can see, the alerts are triggered automatically by Microsoft, and it's up to your security operation team to review and prioritize like the respond to those alerts. As you can see here, a lot of alerts are showing up, so it's like sometimes it can be overwhelming. So automation is important here for some tasks. When it's automated, like Microsoft will take the action for this specific threat. Let me just start the demo and explain to you. As you can see here, this is the dashboard of the office of the Defender Microsoft Security and Compliance Center. So this is the threat investigation that I was talking about earlier. First of all, as you can see here, I applied a filter which gave me all the following malicious informations. So first, if you want to check like for something specific about a specific threat, you can go to the investigation type. As you can see here, all of the following options you have, like it can be a zipped file, it can be a zipped URL, a user that has been compromised. You can choose one of them before like tackling the issue. You can specify a time range, so you can go back as much as you want. And of course, the status. So as you can see here on the status level, some of them are terminated by the system because it's automated. Some of them are still pending, and like one of them is failed.
बता सर सिस्टम ऑन कर रहा है अभी वाली नहीं है ओके सर
Yes, Roshan. Roshan, if you have like any question, just type it on the chat and we will later on explain for you. So as you can see here, all of the following statuses, you can specify a specific status to tackle like any investigation threat. As you can see here, I have all the following information about this specific threat. So the ID of the threat, the status, the detection source, and the investigation type. So it's a malicious URL, which is that, the user, the creation time of this file, the last change time, when like the last time it was automated and how it was terminated, the threat count, and the action taken. Once I open like this specific thread, I will get an investigation graph. So as you can see here, I entered the dashboard for this specific investigation thread. I have the investigation graph, which will explain to me how Microsoft automated all of the following. So the threat was found, the action was taken, which is the soft delete emails. The user investigated, which is the info at Exquitech. The emails investigated for this users. And of course, how it was triggered by this alert. So if let's say I want to check the action, once I press the action, it will take me to this dashboard. We just give it a filter and the time range. I will let it load. I will go like to the user instead. Okay. As you can see here, all of the following emails, which has been like covered by this malicious filter. So as you can see here, all of the following emails, like the total of each one of the email, the malware, the type, which is phishing, and if it was blocked. Let me just refresh my screen. Okay. So as you can see here, we have the start time for the thread. And as you can see here, how much time did it take to stop this thread? And it was automated. It was terminated by the system itself. We'll check if everything is now showing, still not showing. I guess it's a bad connection. Let me like move to the Explorer and I'll go back to the investigation. So as you know, the Explorer is also another feature, which is part of the Defender, Microsoft Defender Office 365. The Explorer is a very powerful tool because it's a near real-time tool to help security operations to keep track of the latest malwares, to the latest malicious files, and it's very informative. So as you can see here, I have the following dashboard related to a certain malware family. Of course, I can filter all of the following options here. So it can be filtered by a sender, by a recipient. It can be something advanced like the alert ID. It can be related to a certain URL. So I have all of the options inside the Explorer. That's how much it's powerful. Of course, I can also filter by the date and specific time as well. So as you can see here, the informative dashboard, which is a chart time zone, it will give me like on a specific date how malicious files were stopped and discovered by the Explorer. So as you can see here on this date and the following date. Moving along, as you can see here, I have all of the following dashboards. One for the emails, so I can keep track like what are the emails that I am receiving, if they are quarantined or not, who is like the sender and who is the recipient, what is the actual subject. If I move like to the top malware families, I will get like all the malwares that were detected by the Explorer. So as you can see here, the top malware families, there you have like the malicious payload, which is having 22 attempts, the Win32, which has 2 attempts, the top targeted user inside the company. So as you can see, I'm the top one targeted with 3 attempts, the HR 3 attempts as well, the info as well, and moving along. The email origin. So as you can see here, this is a new feature from Microsoft. I can check what are like the threads coming from. So as you can see here, we have like small red dots, and all of the following threads are coming like across these areas, from Paris, from Ukraine, from Romania, from Turkey, all of the following. So whenever you choose like a specific malware family or a specific thread, you will get this email origin, which is very interesting. And of course, the campaign, which is related to each one of the malicious family. So as you can see here, we have some campaigns related to malware, to phishing, and the percentage and the type and the subtype. So it can be a malware torsion, or it can be, let's say, a certain specific file, a Win32. So it will depends on the malicious file. So let's say I want to tackle this specific user here. Okay, some of the features are brand new, so Microsoft is still doing some update. So as you can see here, once I tackle this email, I can have a summary for it, like the return pass, the sender name. I can also have all of the following details. So as you can see here, the system overrides the threat and the confidence level, and let's say if it was quarantined or not, what are the action taken, the message ID, the network ID, the campaign ID, all of the following details. As you can see here, the attachment type. So this malicious file, which had two attachments, one image and another zipped file. The malware families, this one was not identified, but this one was identified, which is a Win32. The devices, so if you have enrolled some devices on the portal, you will get even a device for a specific user. And of course, the email timeline, so the date and the source and the event, the action. And what's even more interesting, it can be also detect like similar emails for the specific threat. So as you can see here, we have another similar email from the same sender, and it was blocked. I can even know the IP of the sender and block it as well. So all of the information are very interesting to know and to have. Before I jump to the threat tracker, because it's in a way related to the Explorer, which is mainly about saving a certain query. If later on I want to tackle and get back to a certain threat, or to check like what was detected or what was like the threat type, I can save a query. So whenever I save a certain query, let's say I've selected a certain file and I want to save a query, this query will be inside the threat tracker. Let me just brief you about the threat tracker. Mainly, the threat tracker is a informative widget, and it provides you with specific intelligence and different cybersecurity issues that might impact your company. So let's say someone is trying to talking about trending malware campaign, and the most used tracker include trending numbers that are updated periodically. So it's always updated. And the widgets will be helping you to understand which issues are the biggest and have grown in the most, and quick link inside the action column. So whenever I tackle the threat tracker, let me jump to it from this page instead. So as you can see here, I have saved some queries. It can be saved queries, it can be tracked queries, it can be even trending campaigns. So let's say I saved a certain query, which is a phishing query. So whenever this saved query, whenever I take the action and jump to the explore page, so mainly whatever the action is here is whenever I press on the explore, it will redirect me to the initial explorer over here. So I will keep track like all of the threats that have impacted like my company or my tenant, and I can review it later on. So I guess it will take some time. Also to keep in mind that the following solutions, which are the investigation, the explorer, and the threat tracker, are used by the defender for Office 365 Plan 2 or the E5 license. So mainly you will benefit from those whenever you get the E5 license or the Plan 2. Yes, I have some connection issues. Okay, let me jump to the other solution, which is the Windows Information Protection. So mainly the Windows Information Protection is a solution under the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center. Let me just brief you about it before I start showing you like what are the capabilities. So as you know, nowadays, the increase of the employee-owned devices in the enterprise, there is also an increase of risk of like accidental data leak, because since it's a own device, it can happen. So how can we protect it? How can we protect it? Using the Windows Information Protection. So let's say, for example, we have an employee that is sending like the latest engineering pictures from their personal email account, and let's say they will post it, let's say on social media, for example. So this can be prevented. Also, the Windows Information Protection helps you to protect against any potential data leakage without even like interfering with the employee experience. So they won't even notice like they are being tracked or something like that. Also, it helps to protect the enterprise app data against any leakage on the level of the enterprise owned devices, even if it's a own device or even it's a personal device. So the employee can bring like his personal device and it will be also protected. Of course, having this app protection on the level of the device requires some prerequisites. So for the prerequisites, it will need to be, of course, the operating system will need to be a Windows 10 operating system with the version of 16.07 or later. And for the solution, it will need to be like either the Microsoft Endpoint Manager or Intune. So whenever one of the solutions are applied, we can use the Windows Information Protection. As for the licenses, you will need the Azure AD Premium license. So let me show you how can we create a policy. We have already a policy on set which is deployed. We will create first another one. As you can see here, it can cover the iOS part, the Android part, and the Windows 10 part. So let's say I want to create one for Windows 10. Of course, I will give it a name. I can even check the enrollment state. It can be with enrollment or without enrollment. Here, I will be targeting the apps. So whatever apps I have on my device, it will directly recommend like what should I protect. So as you can see here, the recommended applications over here. So the Excel, the Word, the PowerPoint, the OneDrive, the OneNote, and all of the following. Of course, it can be a store app. So you can like specify a store app and apply it, or a desktop app. So even you can like specify one of your own instead of like checking for the recommended one. And you will apply like you will enter the name, the publisher, the product name, the file itself, the minimum and the max version if there are any update for this specific application, and like what are the action, if it's allow or deny. So once the targeted app is applied, here I will specify the settings. So as you can see here, the Windows Information Protection gives you all of the following actions to protect and to encrypt the data, the corporate data. So it can be silent. It can allow overrides, so the user can override the settings, or you can just block it. Of course, the best practice usually is to block it since it's a sensitive data we're talking about. On the level of the advanced settings, as you can see here, you can specify a specific file to be protected and all of the following actions that can be taken. I won't go over them because we are short on time. And the assignment. So here you will add a specific group. It can be like the financial group, it can be the sales team. You will specify that and you will create the following policy. So once the policy is in set, it will reflect over here. As you can see here, it is deployed. It is updated on the following date. It's covering the Windows 10 platform and with enrollment. So let me give you a small demo regarding this feature. So if I go inside the policy that I have created, so as you can see here, it's blocking and the corporate identity is the following. What are the apps selected? So if I go inside the targeted apps, the apps are Notepad and the Microsoft Teams. So the following apps are inside the following policy. So let me jump like to a virtual machine, which has the following policy applied on it. As you can see here, I have the Microsoft Teams already installed and in place, and all of the following data inside the Microsoft Teams. So let's say I'm trying to download the specific file. So as you can see here, it's already protected because I have applied the Windows Information Protection on it. The user cannot even change it. So it's directly protected by the company. So let's say I'm gonna save it on the desktop. And I will try to access it since I'm not like signed in with a specific user. It will throw now an error because I'm not signing in with a specific user which is under the same domain. Okay, let me just, instead of opening, let me just try to upload it. So let's say I'm trying to upload it with a specific, let's say with the Gmail. So if I go to attachment and let me select on the desktop. So as you can see here, it's encrypted. So whenever I try to upload it, it won't let me upload it because it has actually applied the Windows Information Protection over it. So I cannot even upload it to the Gmail and try to send it. So let's say it's not a Microsoft application. So now this is throwing the error. I cannot use it. So let's say it's not actually Microsoft Teams. Let's say it's a Notepad file. So whenever, let's say, I have any info over here, and let's try to save this file. So let's save it to the desktop as well. As you can see here, it's also protected because the Windows Information Protection is also applied here. So let's try to upload this Notepad file over here as well. I cannot even open it. Let's try instead to open it with Edge. So if I try to open it on the device itself, not uploading it, So let's say I'm trying to open it over here. So as you can see here, whenever I try to open this file, it is actually denied. It is actually not readable. It has been removed. So it needs like specific action. It only can be accessed by the user itself. And I cannot even upload it or share it or open it with another file. So this is mainly the Windows information protection. So as you can see, you can benefit from the web. Like it's the obvious separation between the personal and the corporate data without requiring employees to switch between environments or apps. So as we mentioned earlier, it can be a corporate-owned device or it can be a personal device. What it can offer you as well is the additional data protection for the existing line of business application. So if you have already applications in set, you can even protect on the level of those applications without even the need to update those applications. And of course, the ability to wipe the corporate data directly from the Microsoft Defender. And whenever those devices are enrolled, you can directly, so let's say I have this virtual machine enrolled, I can directly wipe all the corporate data on it. So the user won't have access to it. So let's say I select the following, the virtual machine, which is already enrolled. I can directly wipe the data from here. So whenever I press on the wipe data, all of the corporate data will be erased and all of the personal data will remain on the following virtual machine. This is how much powerful and important the web is. I'm not sure if we still have time to tackle the compliance manager. Arshana, do we still have time to tackle the compliance manager and the e-discovery part?
Emilio, we have around 10 more minutes if you can finish them.
Okay, let me just try to go as fast as possible on the level of the e-discovery tool. So as Ziad was mentioning earlier, on the level of the compliance center, we have all of the following solutions. So if I go inside the catalog over here, I will get like the e-discovery solution, which I will be tackling, the DLP that Ziad was covering, the information governance, the information protection, all of the following solutions that can be tackled from this compliance portal. As for the e-discovery solution, which is a very powerful solution actually, first of all, the e-discovery is can be divided in two parts. We have the core part and the advanced part. As for the core part, mainly it's a basic tool that it will help all of the organizations to use, like to search, to export a content inside Office 365. Also using the core discovery, you can hold some content. So whatever content you have on the level of the Exchange mailbox, on the level of SharePoint sites, on the level of OneDrive accounts, and even Microsoft Teams. So all the following all of the following application can be covered with the e-discovery. And what's really nice here is nothing is needed to deploy on the level of the core e-discovery. So there are no prerequisites for these tasks. But what need to be covered here is the IT admin and the discovery manager should
Emilia, we can't hear you anymore.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes. So regarding the e-discovery, as I was saying, it can cover all of the following application, which are the OneDrive and the Exchange mailboxes and the SharePoint sites. And what's interesting here is like nothing is needed to deploy inside the core e-discovery, but some prerequisites tasks are needed from the level of the global admin. So there are some dependencies because on the level of the e-discovery, you will need to have a specific role to tackle, like to open the cases or to tackle the specific actions over it. So let me brief you as much as possible. So here I can create a certain case, a specific the case. So as you can see here, we have already a case opened. So as you can see here, the specific case, I can add members to it. So each member can go check like the status of this case. I can add a role for this case. And of course, I can update its status. And whenever I'm done, I can close it or delete it. So let me jump inside the case itself. Okay, let me jump to this tab instead, where I have the case already opened over here. So as you can see here, I have all the following dashboards: the home dashboard, the holds dashboard, the searches, the exports. So let's say I'm holding a certain information of a resignated user, of a resigned user. So I will have all of the following information about this user. So when was the last time the data was modified? The user that has modified the data, like the mailboxes and the content, and even like any statistics related to this specific user. Yes, so I guess now it's opened. Okay. Even I can specify a specific search. So as you can see here, I have this query where I can add a certain condition. So let's say the condition is a keyword, a date, a retention label. Let's say I want to tackle some recipients or a specific sender. All of the following condition I can apply to search for a specific file. So it can be even a file type. So if I select a file type, as you can see here, it will give me some example. It can be a document, a PowerPoint, an Excel, a PDF, and so on. I can even add another condition to this file type. So let's say I want a certain document and with a specific date. So here I can use the following query, which have two actions. One of them is like, what is the actual document and the date? And even on the level of the document, it can be either equal any of or none of. And whenever I specify this condition, I will go to the location part. So it can be the location on hold, which we saw earlier on the holds. It can be all location, or I can specify a certain location. So whenever I tackle the specific location, as you can see, it covers all of the following: the Exchange email, the Office 365 group email, the Skype for Business, the Teams, the to-do list, the Sway, the forms, and even the YAML conversation. On the level of SharePoint, it can cover the SharePoint sites, the OneDrive, the team sites. So let's say I want all of the users, I can just press on select all. Or if I want a specific user, I will search for this specific user and add it to this condition. Once the user is chosen and we will run the following search, it will generate for us a specific data for this specific user. And even I can export this data. It will generate an Excel file with all the following information for this specific user. So let's say on the level. Okay, so let me brief you with a small example over here. Let's say it's a missing Word file. So as you can see here, this is like a missing Word file. I can even hold this specific Word file. So let's say I want to create a hold for this specific Word file. It's taking a lot of time. Okay, let's instead jump. Rida, do we still have like 5 minutes?
We're running late, but if you can summarize it, it would be great.
Okay, so I will give like a small brief about the advanced e-discovery, which is inside the e-discovery itself. Inside the advanced e-discovery, it's like a very interesting solution because it provides an end-to-end workflow to preserve and collect and review and even analyze and export the data that's responsive to your organization internal and external investigation. And what's really interesting inside the advanced e-discovery, which is still under preview, it's a new solution that Microsoft will provide. It's a whole new aspect, which is actually the attorney-client privilege detection. So how does that work? When an attorney-client privilege detection is enabled inside the e-discovery case, all the documents that are under the review will be processed by an attorney-client privilege detection model. So it's an AI that Microsoft will provide, and it will analyze the data. Once this data is analyzed, the model will be working on two things. So it will be working on the privileged content, which is actually a machine learning to determine like if the document contains any legal document in nature. And the participants. So who are the participants? The participants are attorneys that you will apply on your tenant. So these attorneys will be notified whenever they have any legal nature content on the level of your documents. So in this way, you can like prevent from any data leakage, or let's say any user wants his data to be confidential, an attorney will be ready to help him regarding all the data that he has. So this is a fast brief about the e-discovery and what's the most interesting feature about it, since we're running out of time. Rida, if we have like any questions for any of the following solutions.
No, we don't have any questions so far, but if anybody wants to add anything, please type it in the chat. Otherwise, we'll just move on. Okay. Today we're offering you a free consultation for your requirements on your business processes. Our security specialist Ziad will be contacting you to discuss your needs. We also have an upcoming webinar on April 28th on when Microsoft Teams meets Power Platform. I'm going to be sending you an invitation for it. We're looking forward to having you in that webinar as well. Thank you again for joining this webinar. We hope it made security clearer for you. I'm also sending you now a form. If you could fill it out and give us your feedback on this webinar, and if you'd like to learn more about specific topics, it would be great. I will also be sending you an invitation for our webinars in May and the recording for this one. Thank you again for attending it, and bye-bye.